everybody. Welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We've got a great Q&A for you. If you're new to the show, it's pretty simple. Type your questions in. I'll do my best to get them answered in the next hour or so. And if you have missed Tuesday's show, that was all about vitamins, minerals, nutrition, and testing, and the nuance of supplementation, etc. You should go check that show out. It's very comprehensive, and it'll help you understand supplements in a whole new light. Additionally, if you want to connect with me, make sure you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. We are probably one of the most heavily censored channels on YouTube, and if you want to make sure you don't miss a show, and you want to make sure that you don't miss an update, if you're on our email list, we make sure that you're being made aware as opposed to being blocked. So you can go over to glutenfreesociety.org and sign up there for our newsletter, and you'll get updates and a bunch of other free, awesome information about how to navigate autoimmunity and inflammation using diet, lifestyle, and nutrition. So let's dive into your questions. Let's see here. 2 weeks post-COVID, this Crystal asking, have Hashimoto and hypersensitivity to foods and medicine. My oxygen levels are a little low, and I'm struggling to take or eat anything. Broths, bone broth is really good. Liquids, sometimes post-illness, can be very effective and very nourishing. As far as if you're still under the weather or still feeling a little bit sick, one of the things that we see work really, really well, actually a few different things we see work really, really well in people. One would be using something called NAC, N-acetylcysteine, crystal at about 1,500 milligrams a day. Another would be using something called matrzyme, which is a proteolytic enzyme. These things are very helpful in regards to detoxification of spike. Now, beyond that, there's something else called an SPM. SPM, we have a product called Ultra SPM, and that stands for Specialized Pro-Resolving Mediator. Sometimes what happens post-infection for people is the inflammation lingers. The immune system is hyper-engaged, and the inflammation is lingering. And what SPMs do is they help the body resolve inflammation. And a lot of people that get sick, their omega levels are very low. We make SPMs from omega-3 fat, but you can actually take SPMs directly with an SPM formula, and it can be very, very helpful and effective. There's a lot of human studies too now that have been coming out on SPMs and their impact in this regard. Best supplements to help reduce incidence of atrial fibrillation, especially during sleep or an hour or two before waking up. There's not like a best, because it just depends, Laura. I mean, calcium, magnesium, potassium, electrolytes can all be helpful in that regard. One of the other things that we see oftentimes drive that is oxalate burdens. If somebody's overburdened by oxalate, that I've seen that drive it up. You might also look at taurine, Taurine, the amino acid. In that regard, can sometimes be very helpful. Okay. What are the plans for moldjack.com? I've been there, but haven't found any content yet. Yep, it's coming. We're working on some last minute behind the scenes things, and just keep checking back. It's coming in a big way. Is it true that vitamin D2 is more immunologically active than vitamin D3? You got to redefine that question because it doesn't make sense. Immunologically active. Define what you mean by that, Dennis. Is there a link between fungus and fermented foods? There can be. Sometimes fermented foods are contaminated by fungus, depending on the food, Kathy. Maybe clarify your question for me. I'm not 100% sure I know what you're trying to ask me, but most fermented foods are fermented by bacteria more so than they are by fungus. But again, clarify your question and I can give you a better answer. Is it dangerous to take more than 200 micrograms of selenium? No. So in that regard, I mean, everybody's different, Lori. Selenium isn't dangerous at 200 micrograms or more than 200 micrograms. But I would say if you're going to be on higher doses for long periods of time, it's not a bad idea to have your levels checked periodically to make sure you're not doing something problematic there for yourself. You might also go check out my crash course on selenium where I discuss, the side effects of too much selenium. I mean, probably one of the most common side effects would be splitting nail beds, which is also a symptom of low selenium, and hair loss. So, keep those two things in mind. Check out that crash course. Do you have a supplement training course? I'm looking for one. I have probably 50 crash courses on supplements, on nutrients. So if you want to learn the science behind each of the vitamins and minerals, if you want to learn, we talk about in these crash courses, we talk about what it is, what it does, how it might be helpful. If you're supplementing, what doses have been shown in human studies to be effective. We talk about side effects. We talk about lab testing. So I would argue that our crash course database is bar none the most advanced level of knowledge that anyone could go partake of in terms of vitamins and minerals anywhere on the internet. I would argue that very, and probably be very accurate in that. So go check out our crash courses. We have a whole playlist called Nutritional Crash Courses, and those are free, so you don't have to pay for them. So in that regard, I could probably build a training course and charge a lot of money for it, but I believe that people should have access to great information so they can make great decisions about their health. What's the quickest way to rehab the heart? In terms of what, Wendell? Is it congestive heart failure? Is it some other form of heart disease? Is it high blood pressure? What is it that you're actually dealing with? Because that's the context of the question that would matter, and it would manipulate my answer or change my answer to give you a better feedback. Jess, on AFib topic, what supplements would interfere with AFib medications? It's not so much that supplements interfere with medications as it is that medications cause nutritional deficiencies that can create the very disease that the medication is intended to treat. That being said, if you're taking, again, context is the most important thing. You're asking me because there are a lot of different medicines that are used to treat AFib. So which specific medicine, that gives me a little bit better understanding of what you're asking. What are your thoughts on medicinal mushrooms? Reishi, turkey tail, Spiraceous crispa, etc. Research shows has good immune boosting and cancer fighting effects. Interested in your take? I think medicinal mushrooms can be helpful in many regards as far as their immune qualities are concerned, especially reishi. So I mean, I think it just depends on what you're trying to do with them. If you're just trying to use them and incorporate them into your day-to-day for just natural immune support, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there are a lot of other options beyond mushrooms, though, that I would pick versus, say, a mushroom. Are ionic foot baths effective? If so, what do they help with? So, I'm not a fan of ionic foot baths. Now, let me preface that. Any of you that have an ionic foot bath, you use an ionic foot bath, swear by ionic foot bath helping you. This is not me trying to dismantle your experience. I've talked to a lot of people who felt like those foot baths helped them quite a bit. But as far as what they do, there's no great documented objective evidence on what they do. It's one of the reasons I don't recommend them, not necessarily because they may not have an impact, but because anything I try to recommend in my practice, I've got to have enough data and research to be comfortable in making a recommendation for somebody to go spend their hard-earned money on something. So hopefully that helps you understand my take there. I'd love to learn proper timing on when to take certain supplements. My naturopath has me on a lot. Okay, so timing is this is just a general rule, and there are nuanced variances to a lot of things, but as a general rule of thumb, take your supplements with food. Remember that food, anything that's in your supplements, if they're vitamins or minerals, is also in food, and it's there in mixed quantities. So, a lot of doctors will try to overcomplicate this by saying, don't take, as an example, don't take calcium with magnesium because they compete for absorption. I don't agree or see eye to eye with those things. Your foods that contain calcium also contain magnesium and zinc and many other nutrients that have the potential to compete with each other, but they're there and they're present in food, and therefore your body has the ability to deal with that. So focus less on trying to micromanage, what exact time of the day you need to take this versus this versus this, and focus more on being consistent. I find clinically that if a person is consistent with the right dose and they take their supplements with their food, preferably, and you split your dosing. And I like to use this, what's called a split dosing schedule, which is AM, PM, right? Take a dose in the morning with your first meal, take a dose in the afternoon with your meal. And if you're doing it that way, you're probably going to be just fine. Why is the cellular test that you do on nutrition not accepted by conventional medicine? I don't know. I can't explain the thoughts behind what conventional doctors are thinking, beyond the fact that they don't study nutrition and they don't understand nutrition, and therefore they're probably not the most well-versed on helping people nutritionally. And so that probably has something to do with it, but I'm not going to pretend to read the minds of, hundreds of thousands of other doctors and hospital systems who have a poor track record of getting anyone healthy. Good afternoon. I am taking myoinositol, 4 grams, and methylfolate. However, my sleep has not improved, nor has my testosterone increased. Do I need to take B12 as well? Maybe, maybe not. Go get tested. Go get nutritionally tested. There's a lot of reasons testosterone can be low. I mean, probably arguably one of the biggest reasons is lack of weight training or resistance training. And secondarily is the exposure to, for men, the exposure to, and women, the exposure to synthetic estrogen chemicals found in, plastics, cosmetics, and a number of other things like pesticides, etc. So avoiding eating out of plastic, avoiding any kind of estrogen-based synthetic chemicals in your soap, shampoos, lotions, avoiding food that is not organic is going to go a long way to helping reduce your synthetic estrogen burden, which can also impact your testosterone. Let's see. Can calcium and magnesium be taken together? I think I just answered that one indirectly. Yes, they can be. We have a supplement called CalMag, so definitely you can take them together. Husband had 1.5 quarts of fluid taken out of his left lung on Tuesday. Didn't get it all. What would be the best practices to fight the rest of the fluid? Doctor thinks it's bacterial, but might be cancer. It's a tough one to answer, Tammy, because if it's bacterial, then treating the bacterial infection would be the most pertinent thing to do, because fluid accumulation occurs as a result of bacterial infection, as well as cancers. If they're not sure yet, I'm sure they're doing additional diagnostics. But one thing that won't hurt is NAC, N-acetylcysteine, can be very, very effective as a mucolytic in the lungs, and sometimes can help clear the lungs out. So something that could be done very easily. But you really need to get to the bottom of why. If it's infection, that needs to be dealt with. You can also, relatively safely, he can take, there are a number of different herbs that can be used that have antimicrobial properties, things like uva ursi and berberine, oregano, thyme, garlic, all have really strong antimicrobial properties that for many people are very helpful. Should you take break from supplements and vitamins, or is it okay to take every single day? It's okay to take them daily. Um, I think taking a break is dependent upon how you're feeling. Some people get pill fatigued, and so taking a break ensures that they get that break, and then that they can get back to it after the fact without just becoming overwhelmed. But I also think it depends on why you're taking them. If you're taking them under supervision because you have major deficiency and illness as a result of that deficiency, then taking a break from them might not be the best move. I'm having an INA done next Friday. What should I do to prepare? PS, feeling great on 4 months, no grain, no pain, organic. Love it. I'm so happy that that your life's enhanced as a result of my work. No need to prepare. The INA test doesn't require any special preparation. You just need your arm and a phlebotomist to draw a vial of blood from you. So you don't need to fast. You don't need to stop anything that you're currently doing. The test is an average of the last 6 months using lymphocyte proliferation as a technology. So it gives you a good, solid nutritional read over the last 6 months. So there's no need to stop your vitamins on the day of the test or, days before the test either. Like that feedback. Somebody says, hey, we're doing really good on taurine, 1,500 to even 3,000 milligrams a day seems to be the sweet spot. Chime in on what you're seeing as a difference, because we talked about taurine a few weeks ago, and I know a lot of you probably watching that show, wanted to check taurine out. So maybe comment on when you say it's the sweet spot, what does that look like to you? What kind of benefit are you experiencing? Let's see, Yvonne. Hi, Dr. Osborne. Why is methylene blue is bad? Can you explain, please, in detail? It would require an entire hour probably to really go into the depth of that. But as a general rule of thumb, for a healthy person, I don't recommend methylene blue. There's actually evidence that shows it can slow down mitochondrial function. I'm also just not a big fan of synthetic chemicals as a solution for a person's health. I think that we have had 70 years of mainstream medicine throwing synthetic chemicals at people with the crummiest outcomes in history. But methylene blue is one of those that's become popular. There are a few people out there raving about how fantastic it is, and I think there are indications for it, certainly, and I think there are situations where it might be helpful for a person. But I think for an average healthy person to take methylene blue, you run the risk of damaging your own mitochondria, and that's just not something that I think is a smart idea. Do blood thinners cause anemia? No, generally not. I mean, a lot of your first generation blood thinners like warfarin and Coumadin are vitamin K antagonists, and so they block vitamin K, which is an important vitamin for the clotting cascade, and that's how those blood thinners work. But then you have others like Eliquis, some of the newer generation stuff, and they work through a little bit different of a mechanism. But to my knowledge, they're not causing anemia. What's best to take if you are getting the flu or something similar? Go back and watch our show last week from Tuesday. We can put Mel, can we put a link up for JJ? I did a whole show on what to take for colds and flus. As a general rule of thumb, high doses of vitamin D, NAC, vitamin C, quercetin, elderberry, vitamin A are all good places to start. What are your thoughts on liposomal supplements versus regular ones? BJ's asking. BJ, depends on the supplement. Liposomal can enhance absorption for certain things. The problem with a lot of liposomals is that they're corn-based, corn derivative. And for that reason, I'm a no grain advocate. No grain, no pain is the name of the book I wrote. And I'm not a fan of liposomals that use corn. So if you've got liposomals using some other type of technology beyond corn, There can be some advantages, but I have not seen clinically. I use both. It just depends on the patient, but I've used both non-liposomal and liposomal products and have never really seen a tremendous difference in clinical outcomes. And a lot of the research on liposomal versus non-lipo, a lot of times that stuff is funded by the company who's making the liposomal products, and so there's a tremendous issue with bias in some of that research. But just my own experience, clinically speaking, liposomal is not more effective as a general rule of thumb than non-liposomal. What's effective with supplementation is consistency, and I can't say that enough. Consistency is key. Where people go wrong with supplements is either they don't take it consistently or they don't take a meaningful dose, like they're taking the dose, like the equivalent dose of like spitting on a forest fire. You're not going to do much with your spit to a forest fire, and if your dose is inadequate when you're trying to supplement, you're not going to do much with that supplement for its effectiveness. So consistency and dose, probably the two most important factors. My mom is 83 and celiac. They say she needs a colonoscopy. I think the issue is blood thinners. I'm not sure that's a question. If she's celiac, and they already know that, the question is, does she need a colonoscopy or does she need to be gluten-free, and more specifically, grain-free? But maybe ask a question. I don't know if that's just a comment or what. Let's see. Nicole says, Dr. Osborne, I love your Warrior Bread, but I'm concerned that the almonds are not organic since they have been found to be some of the highest sprayed foods. That's a big part of the problem is we cannot source them consistently. And so it's something our team is worked on and is working on to get the almonds to be on the organic side. The problem has been that we're running into supply issues, and as soon as we can resolve that, Nicole, you'll see that change coming. Thank you for that feedback. If you have suddenly started to react to some foods, how do you know if you have leaky gut? Well, I mean, you can do testing for leaky gut. There are a number of different measurements that can be done in your gut. Zonulin and lactoferrin and calprotectin are just a few examples of tests that measure leakiness or inflammation in the gut. But if you're reacting to different foods and that's a new thing, you should probably consider getting tested for food reactivity, but also getting your microbiome tested. You should look at your history around antibiotic use or other, even if you haven't used drug-based antibiotics, whether you're being exposed to environmental antibiotics like chlorine and fluoride in your water, as well as, pesticide exposure from foods that you might be eating, because all those things are drivers of leaky gut. Synthetic food additives and chemicals in the food are also drivers of leaky gut. So, you've got to cut all those types of things out. And the best advice I could give anyone who's really struggling is stop eating processed food. Eat real food. Cook your food at home. A lot of this stuff, just like the medical community has pretty much destroyed all trust the average consumer has in them, especially after the past 4 years or so, the food industry is doing the same thing. The food industry has taken liberties with our food and put chemicals and garbage and junk in our food that has been mass poisoning us on large scale. And now that there's pressure and awareness that's coming to light, they're in some cases they're changing, which is good. But in other cases, they're doubling down and trying to deny it. Thank God we have now Robert Kennedy Jr. was just formally nominated as HHS Secretary, Health and Human Services Secretary. So we now have a fighting chance to get the nonsense out of our food and medical so that we can have an opportunity at actually being healthy without having to become biochemists and rabbit hole researchers for every single thing that we try to do. What's your opinion of the use of TUDCA for those on estrogen HRT who tend to have an inflammatory response? I'm not opposed to it. I like taurine better than Tudka. And, as far as the supplement is concerned, taurine helps you to make bile acids, but also has so many other additional benefits. Okay, so quickest way to rehab the heart where you've had edema. So if you've had edema in your lower extremities because your heart is failing, so that would, maybe that would be congestive heart failure. Again, I'm just trying to surmise, Wendell, your meaning. Figure out why. CoQ10 is a good place to start. Vitamin B1 is a good place to start, but so is movement, motion, and activity. Cut out all sugars, cut out all processed foods, eat real food. Also, a good place to start is to go outside and get sunshine as much as possible. The sunlight helps your mitochondria produce more energy and has anti-inflammatory properties on your cells. And so those are all great things that you can do as a first start. I got a result on a cortisol of 15.7. Does that mean I have developed Cushing disease? No. First of all, I don't know what the measurement is in. Second of all, I don't know what time of day your cortisol was measured. Cortisol is a circadian hormone, so it changes. It's high in the morning, it's lower at noon, it's lower again in the afternoon, and it's lowest at night. So it kind of, cortisol follows a lazy L-shaped pattern in terms of how much you make, and it all depends on what time of the day. So one measurement of cortisol at an unknown time with an unknown measurement type doesn't tell me a whole lot. But I can tell you this, you're not going to be able to tell whether you have Cushing disease from one cortisol reading. Even if I had the other information, I couldn't answer that question. Two topics I'd love to see covered. One, toenail fungus, thick toenails you can't even cut. I'm in my 50s and suddenly have 3 small skin tags on my right side of my torso. Why? You're in mold, Susan. Have a good forensic mold inspector come out and investigate your home. They need to come out with infrared camera, with humidity readers or hygrometers. They need to have fiber optic cameras they can put behind your wall. The mold inspector needs to be able to measure or test for airflow. Of course, they can have air testing devices that measure mold spores potentially in your air, but those tests are not definitive, so it shouldn't be the sole focus of the mold inspector's exam on your home. It should be one tool, but that's what I would suggest, because anytime we see skin tags popping up, my theory on skin tags is that they're actually mold. And I've seen a number of things clinically that corroborate that. Number two, toenail fungus is mold. And generally, we don't grow mold under our toenails unless we're immunocompromised. And the number one way for that to happen is if we're living in an environment that's immunocompromising. And so a lot of things you can do to improve your immune function: air quality, water quality, food quality, sleep quality, exercise, and sunshine, though, are the 6 fundamental things that will affect a person and weaken their immune system if they're being done improperly or not being done well. So think about all those things and put them together. And then if you're missing certain key aspects, reverse engineer how to fix those. What supplement should my husband take for enlarged prostate? Selenium, zinc, saw palmetto. We have a product called Prostate Support. We can put a link up for that one. But that's where I would start. I would also, with prostate, enlarged prostate, if it's benign, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, consider mold. Consider mold. We see a lot of prostates enlarged as a result of that. Consider diet as well. A lot of times we'll see enlarged prostates are a secondary consequence of the high carbohydrate diets and heavy grain-based diets. So if your husband hasn't changed his diet or isn't thinking about changing his diet, maybe plant that bug in his ear, maybe buy him a copy of No Grain, No Pain, and let him read that and, get moving in the right direction. I'm having remediation done for mold next week. As far as detoxifying from OTA, ochratoxin A, I heard that black seed oil detoxifies mycotoxins. Is this true? I haven't seen any compelling evidence that black seed oil does that. That doesn't mean there's no compelling evidence that exists. I just haven't seen it, Lynn. What I would generally tend to use for ochratoxin, if we're trying to use a binding agent to pull it out, is I'd use a combination of zeolite, charcoal, fulvic acid. If a person's tolerable of fiber, fiber, good whole food fiber choices in the diet, because those act as binders. I'd also look at using some nutrients that help the liver convert the fat soluble OTA into water soluble OTA, so that you can sweat it out, using either using exercise or sauna. But for that, we use things like methylated B vitamins, methylfolate, methylcobalamin. We also use things like NAC, cysteine, N-acetylcysteine, and alpha lipoic acid. These are all very helpful for the liver to be able to process. We also use glutathione. So those are all good things to start with. Do you think a water-only fast anywhere from 18 hours to 3 days helps fight off a cold or flu faster? There's an old adage, an old wives' tale adage of starve a cold, feed a flu. I think if, and I've seen that hold out to be pretty true. If you have a cold, fasting may be better, but if you have a flu, not so much. With the flu, generally comes super high fevers and muscle wasting, because the fevers cause intense sweat, and then you're eating into your muscle tissue to fight the flu. And so if you're not providing enough protein when you're sick with the flu, you could end up losing a bunch of muscle mass. So in the case of a flu, I wouldn't fast. Ultraviolet light manufacturers claim they kill dust mites and bed bugs. Do they work? I know you have said that they don't kill mold. Seems if it works, it would help with dust mites and allergy. It wouldn't be something that I would buy if I had dust mite or bed bug problem, as a means to sanitize. More specifically, if you want to use something, on your bedding, get a good clothesline and hang your bedding outside and let it dry in the sun. But like an indoor ultraviolet light doesn't hold a candlestick to sunlight. And I think that's the biggest problem. Yes, UV light can kill things, but dose matters. And that fresh outdoor hanging is going to be far more effective than any kind of small UV light you might buy for indoor use. Are there going to be questions? Yeah, we're already answering them. So I think that maybe was asked earlier. How should I improve gut flora with histamine intolerance? Find out why you have histamine intolerance. Now, while you're looking for that answer, we have a probiotic called Biotic Force, which really is very tolerable by people with histamine issues and works really, really well to support healthy gut flora. But you need to reverse engineer why the histamine issue is happening. There's a lot of reasons that can happen. I've seen low vitamin C cause histamine issues. We use vitamin C. We use a formula called Histassist, which is a mixture of bromelain and vitamin C and nettle and quercetin, which all help. What those nutrients do together in synergism is they help to stabilize the membrane around mast cells, which are the cells that release histamine. And so using those products together for a lot of people makes tremendous difference in their histamine reactions. The other thing you might consider is DAO, diamine oxidase. It's an enzyme that degrades histamine, and many people with gluten issues, and they don't even know it, they've damaged their gut flora, and they've damaged their ability to make enzymes in their gut. And DAO, a lot of our DAO is made in our gut, which again, if you've damaged your gut through the consumption of a food, you can stop eating that food. So maybe consider getting looked at for gluten sensitivity if you haven't already. But using DAO supplementally can be very, very helpful in the interim, just to try to help you improve your quality of life. Is a 5-day water only fast good for autophagy and good health? It can be. I think fasting. I think it depends on the person. I think it depends on their situation. I think fasting can be a very valuable tool, but where I see a lot of people go wrong is they're using fasting as a tool to improve their health, but they're not changing their diet or their regular day-to-day choices. And so what happens is they do these 5-day or 3-day fasts or 7-day fasts. They feel great for a short time, but then they go back to all the old behaviors that created the problem in the first place. And so if you're going to implement fasting as a tool to get better, you also have to make sure you're implementing diet and lifestyle changes to, on the flip side of that fast to maintain any benefits that it might give you. Can we scroll down on the left? What is the best to take for antioxidants? Whole food and good behaviors. I mean, if you're first and foremost, what do we use antioxidants for? We use antioxidants to preserve and protect the integrity of our DNA when we're making copies of it so that we can make new cells. And so poor antioxidant status can lead to accelerated aging and accelerated inflammation, or what are some people are calling inflammaging, right? The aging acceleration as a result of the process of inflammation. So, a lot of the greatest antioxidants come from just real whole foods, healthy foods. Zinc drives antioxidant systems. Copper and manganese, these are all minerals that drive antioxidant systems. Selenium is a potent antioxidant. Vitamin C is a potent antioxidant. So eating foods that contain these nutrients that have strong antioxidant qualities are the best way to get your antioxidants. Now, if you're trying to supplement to get more, there's a number of different things that work well. I actually have a formula called Ultra Antioxidants that I'm partial to, and there are several key antioxidants in that formula to help support you in your diet. So if you want to check that out, you just go to Gluten Free Society and type in Ultra Antioxidants in the search bar, and it'll pull right up for you. I searched for silver, and they're all the colloidal type, which I know you said is inferior. Colloidal is not something I recommend. I like hydrosolized silver, and if you go to Gluten Free Society, search for Ultra Silver. We have it there. Are there any supplements that everyone should be taking? I think we can make, in my own opinion, I think there are 2 supplements that everybody should be taking, regardless of what they're doing. One is a good quality multivitamin. The other is a good quality omega-3. But outside of that, it becomes nuanced. It becomes, should everybody be taking berberine for their blood sugar? Well, if you eat well and exercise, you don't need extra help for blood sugar, then berberine is not going to do much for you. And you could say that about pretty much most other supplements as well. There's context around that, and so it depends on the person. So, but a good multi, we have a product called Ultra Nutrients that I highly recommend you check out. It's my custom formulation. It is extremely well tolerated, even by the most sensitive of people who have a history of reacting to supplements. And then we also have something called Omega Max, which is a highly concentrated omega-3, which is tested for heavy metals and other chemicals. So it's chemical metal free and very safe to use. So those 2 things would be 2 I would put on the top of my list of essentials. Now, outside of that, if you're gluten sensitive and you do any kind of traveling or you have to eat other people's food, there's a 3rd supplement I recommend that you take with you, and that's called Gluten Shield, and it's a digestive enzyme that can degrade gluten should you get accidental or cross-contamination type of exposure. So APIB meds, rivaroxaban, sotalol, spironolactone, rampuril, any supplements to replace these. Now, I don't recommend, Jess, supplements to replace your medicines unless you're working one-on-one with somebody who knows what they're talking about and doing. That being said, to me, what I would recommend for anybody taking any of those medicines would be to get testing done, get some nutritional testing done, do an INA. If your doctor won't order it, go to Gluten Free Society. You can order it there. We have it there for a reason. For those of you whose doctors aren't nutritionally trained or don't want to even investigate nutrition, you can do it on your own. But get that kind of testing done, because there may be some smoking gun key nutritional deficiencies that are the answer or the part of the solution to AFib as a general rule. So testing when it comes to diseases and medications, it would be irresponsible of me to say, oh yeah, just stop all your medicines and take this vitamin instead. You really have to get clarity around what your needs are and what your situation is specifically. I'd love to hear, Dr. Osborne, I'd love to hear your connection on epilepsy, seizures, and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. The connection is very strong. I can share a story with you guys. It's really, really kind of a neat story. So I was treating a family. This is probably 20 years ago. Young family comes to me. They've got 5 kids. 2 of the kids have seizures. And that's why they're coming in, because the kids have seizures. So we find out that these children are gluten sensitive. We get them off of gluten. Seizures go away. They're doing fantastic. Pediatrician, actually, this is one of the few times the pediatrician actually did call, right? I've had so many people where the disease goes away and their doctors never call and ask me, how the heck did you help them do that? But this was one of those cases where the pediatrician called me. We had a great conversation. Even to this day, that pediatrician still refers people to my office. These 2 kids, however, fast forward a few years, their parents got a divorce. So mom and dad decide, this whole gluten thing is too much stress. Dad doesn't want to be gluten-free, divorces his wife. He's got split custody with the kids. The kids go to visit dad on the weekends. Now dad's feeding them pizza. Kids are eating pizza, coming home. That week they're having seizures, and mom's having to deal with hospitals and seizures again. And so anyway, father's unwilling to be amicable to their diet needs. So she takes him to court. Then they end up pulling and dragging me into it. So I go to court. The judge asks me, he says, Dr. Osborne, do you believe that these kids need to be gluten-free in order to reduce or to prevent them from having seizures? It was very simple. I said, yes. He banged his gavel and said, okay. He told the father, if you don't get on the program, we're going to take away your custody. And he did. The father did get with the program. They didn't take away his custody. He actually got with the program. And then the kid's seizures went away again. So is there a connection? Absolutely. That's anecdote story, but I have seen a number of cases of seizure disorders go away with gluten-free diets. And it's also, there's also quite a bit written in the medical literature on this very topic. As a matter of fact, Discovery Health did a show maybe 15 years ago or so on seizure. There's a young baby that had a seizure disorder, and his mom was celiac disease. Most of the time, neurologists don't understand that there's a connection between seizure and gluten, so they don't even investigate it. But in this case, the pediatrician of this baby knew that the mom had celiac disease and happened to also know that celiac disease, one of the extraintestinal manifestations of celiac disease, can be seizure. So he proceeded to test this child and found that this child was indeed gluten sensitive, took the baby gluten-free, and the baby quit having seizures. That was a fantastic discovery on the Discovery Channel. It was a medical show. Anyway, phenomenal connection between seizures and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Is there an autoimmune link with Raynaud's? Yeah, Raynaud's is autoimmune. And now I've seen cases of Raynaud's go away on a gluten-free diet. I've also seen cases of Raynaud's perpetuate on a gluten-free diet because the person going gluten-free, when they quit eating bread and grains, they started eating all the almond flour stuff, and so overdid almonds to such a great degree that oxalates were driving their Raynaud's. And so I've seen cases of oxalate toxicity being a driver of that autoimmune condition as well. Okay. For loading dose, 150,000 units for 3 days, is it best to use capsules? If you're talking about vitamin D, for vitamin D, 150,000 units times 3 a day, times 3 days, and discontinue. And capsules are best because most of the time the liquid bottles that you buy, including the ones I have on Gluten Free Society, we've got several varieties. You're taking the whole bottle just to get the loading dose. But we have a product called Ultra D3, which each capsule is 50,000 units. And so the bottle is loaded for, getting you the proper dose without having to drink bottles of oil with vitamin D in it. Feels like I don't know, maybe it's a typo. Feels like alcohol poisoning sometimes in the morning, but not when taking berberine at night. Does it mean SIBO or SIFO? It could be. I mean, berberine's an antimicrobial. It can kill fungus, yeast. It can also kill bacteria, pathological bacteria. So it's possible you have an autobrewery symptom where your gut is, the microorganisms in your gut are fermenting carbohydrates in your diet, converting carbs into alcohol, making you feel alcohol poisoned, and taking berberine, can for some reduce that. So that's, on the surface, that would be, an intelligent thought, but I would say go get tested, get your microbiome checked, and see if that's what's actually happening. So, question about reason for elevated PLR. Define PLR. What do you mean by that? I have a fissured tongue. Any thoughts? There's a lot of things, mostly B vitamins, that can contribute to geographic tongue or fissures in the tongue. I mean, just off the top of my head, there are other reasons why, but that's a real common one. Last week, asked a question about uterine fibroids, estrogen dominance. So why would a person be estrogen dominant? So the reason people become estrogen dominant is not because they make too much estrogen. It's because they're exposed to too much environmental chemical estrogens, plastics, pesticides, and other estrogen-based chemicals in cosmetics and household products. So this is why you go natural. This is why it's so important to go natural. A lot of these chemicals are synthetic estrogens, or what are known as xenoestrogens. It's one of the reasons when COVID was happening, I was very adamant about not wearing masks, because the masks are sprayed with chemicals that have not only perfluoroalkyl substances, so they're immunosuppressing chemicals, but also plasticizers that are estrogen based. So everybody that was, wearing those things for, 12, 14, 16 hours a day were just breathing in immune suppressing chemicals with artificial estrogens. It was horrible for the health of our country. What supplements should you take for menopause? I mean, if you're having menopausal symptoms like hot flashes and vaginal dryness and mood swings, there are a lot of different things that can be used. Certain herbs like chaste tree and black cohosh can be effective. We have something called it's women's formula. It's called Ultra Balance, and it's got a mixture of different things, including those herbs and calcium D-glucarate. It can be helpful for women going through menopause, but that's where I would start if you're just talking about a supplement. Beyond that, I would do some testing to try to determine what's the origin source of those symptoms. What are your thoughts on one room in the house testing for chitomium, but not in the rest of the house, and no HVAC? Is remediation work okay? Maybe. I mean, man, that's such a tough question, Barbara, because it's possible, depending on how they measured the chitomium. If it was an air test, you have to understand that air tests are highly inaccurate in regards to the fact that you can get false negatives. Now, you can't get a false positive on an air test, but you can get a false negative. And so it's possible that some of the other rooms in your house were false negative tests. if they were air tests. Now, if they were tape lifts or MSQ PCR, genetic dust samples, probably a little bit more accuracy in that regard. But something you should know about Chitomium is it's a very heavy mold, very water saturated mold. It doesn't tend to float very high in the air. So when mold inspectors come out and set their tripods up and run that air test, Chitomium is not one that will typically show up unless the mold inspector does something called a disturbance test, where they disturb the floor and move the air around on the floor to work that stuff up into the air so that it can show up in the air test more accurately. And a lot of times mold inspectors don't do that. They do the opposite. They go into the room, everything is still, they turn off all the air, and they draw the sample from a room that has no motion or movement in it, and that's highly unethical. I see this a lot in the building communities where the builders don't want to find mold, because if they find it, they have to fix the work because the house is under warranty. And so they train their mold inspectors to go in there and to not find mold, and so they do everything they can to reduce the chances of finding anything on testing. Very corrupt area. Does taking peptides BP1 or BPC 157 and KPV and thymogen alpha help with Sears? What helps with Sears is getting out of mold, Misty. I'm not opposed to peptides. I think the problem with a lot of peptides is they're not controlled very well. They're not made. You can buy them online, but they're not made for human use, and there's a high level of discrepancy between brands. And I have a strong skepticism about companies that produce those products, because there's no accountability. If the product does or doesn't contain it, they're labeling it as not for human use, and so you, by buying it with such a label, are agreeing that you're going to use that product with whether it's good or whether it's not. That's not to say that peptides can't be helpful, but I'd say if you're looking at peptide therapy, going through a doctor that is giving you a pharmaceutical grade peptide is going to be a better choice than just kind of guessing at it online. But number one way to help Sears is to get out of the mold. Most people still struggle with Sears because they think they're out of mold, but they're not actually out of mold. At least that's my experience with it. Do you have a video on tooth problems and pain? I think we did an interview with a biological dentist a few years ago. Do you have that, Mel? You can post for Daisy. We go into some things. It's not the deepest interview I've ever done, but it's a pretty good one. You might check it out. Actually, my son's a dentist, and we'll probably be doing some shows more on dentistry as he comes to the studio. I developed pancreatic cysts. Is there a supplement to help break down these cysts? What kind of cyst? Usually pancreatic cysts are benign. And anytime I see a benign cyst that just forms in somebody for no unknown reason, I generally think one of two things: blood sugar problems and mold. So I would look into those two areas. As far as supplements, you could try a proteolytic enzyme and you might see some benefit, but again, I would investigate the why more than I would try to supplement it away. What do you do if you have a protein fermentation issue? I would argue that you don't have a protein fermentation issue. I'd argue that if you have an issue, it's probably not a fermentation issue. Is it let me maybe add some context, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brian, but is what happening is you're eating a lot of animal protein and then it stays heavy in your gut and won't go anywhere and causes a lot of gas and bloating? Because if that's the case, you might try betaine hydrochloride acid or like some apple cider vinegar before the meal, and try eating smaller serving sizes of protein. Some people don't. They have damage to their stomachs, and so they're not adequately producing stomach acid, and that's one of the reasons why we'll see people have protein problems as a general rule. You can let me know if I missed the mark on that and just chime back in. Essential tremor, no one can figure out why. Can a combination of supplements help? Maybe. I would start with vitamin B1 and magnesium, but B1 has benfotiamine. We have something called Ultra B1, which we use a lot in people with essential tremors. I'd also look at CoQ10. But yeah, I would get tested. For those of you who want to get tested right now, we're having our Valentine's Day sale. What's that code?
Love 79.
Yeah, Love 79. Yeah, so if you go to Gluten Free Society, you can pick up INA intracellular nutrition testing to measure your vitamin and mineral status. Type the code LOVE79 and you'll save $79. You can also do that if you want to learn about gluten sensitivity. We also offer gluten sensitivity genetic markers. And so again, same coupon code for both. So if you're looking for more of a solid answer and you want to get measured, those are ways you can do that and save a little money. Are there supplements my friends should take or avoid post lumpectomy? I assume you mean lumpectomy from a breast. She's now doing radiation for 5 weeks. She's trying to eat better and exercise. Should she take something pre-post radiation? I mean, with cancer, get tested. Don't mess around. Just don't mess around. There may be some contraindication with what her cancer doctors are saying in terms of what they want her to take during radiation treatment. After the fact, you could throw the kitchen sink at somebody nutritionally because nutrition's where it's at for recovery. But I would get tested. I mean, there's not like one. I'd say if I were going to pick one supplement only, it would definitely be vitamin C in relationship to the C word. My daughter is told her estrogen is low and she has ovarian polyps they want to remove. How does she rid them naturally and bring up her estrogen? She needs to go gluten grain-free. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is diabetes of the ovaries. And so it's her diet. Her diet is what's causing it. And diets that are high carbohydrate are going to drive polyp formation or cyst formation in the ovaries. So that would be number one. The other thing about gluten is an endocrine disruptor that can lower a woman's estrogen. As a matter of fact, I did an entire show on gluten and estrogen and laid out how with the average woman who's gluten sensitive, who doesn't avoid gluten, loses 15 years of their fertility on average if she doesn't go gluten-free. It's one of the primary drivers of infertility in our country today is gluten exposure. So I would highly encourage her to read No Grain, No Pain and change her diet. I have a nerve that flares often for no good reason, feels like a knife in the back. What nutrients can I take to turn off the pain response? You do PT, chiro, and dry needling. Has it not been helpful? I mean, if you're trying to decentralize aggressive pain, neurological pain response, B vitamins might be helpful for you. Something called SPM, specialized pro-resolving mediators, might be super helpful in that regard. But ultimately, I would get tested. I get your nutrient levels tested. What supplements can be used to deplete mold toxins and heavy metals? Lots of them. I have a product called Mycobinder that we use, and it's got fulvic acid. It's got charcoal, and it has zeolite in it as the binding agents. And we also have a product called Heavy Metal Ultra Metal Detox, which has a number of different ingredients in it, including lipoic acid and EDTA and cysteine NAC, among other things. Do you use kombucha as a chelator? No, I don't. I don't use it as a chelator. Love it. Billy says, love the show. Peter, you saved my life. Awesome. Awesome. I'm so glad my show could help you. What supplements do you recommend for a person with autoimmune disease? I recommend you figure out why you have an autoimmune disease. Supplements aren't going to fix an autoimmune disease. Supplements can support you, but they're not going to fix why you have the problem. You have to get testing done, Solomon. So there's 4 drivers for autoimmunity: eating the wrong food, being exposed to the wrong chemicals, microbes that don't belong, and nutritional deficits can all be driving causes of autoimmunity. And so nutritional deficits, you could say, okay, well, which nutrients? Okay, the most common, or one of the most common, is vitamin D deficiency. So if you want to start there, have your vitamin D levels checked. It's a simple test called 25-OHD. Any doctor can order it. And your goal with autoimmunity is to have your level between 70 and 100. And if it's not, you can supplement accordingly. But, you really want to go deeper into that rabbit hole of why the autoimmune disease exists and have measurements done. With ALS, chronic constipation is a real problem. What would be the best solution for chronic constipation? You could try higher doses of magnesium and vitamin C. They both work as osmotics to pull water into the bowel and help with bowel function. You could try, we have something called GI Restore, which has something in it called K-Palo, which can stimulate bowel movements really, really well for people with neurological bowel suppression. So those would be all good options that I would encourage you to check out. Scroll down just a hair more. How do I heal adrenal fatigue and kidneys? I think it's a source of high blood pressure. Margie, thanks for chiming in. So adrenal fatigue is a situation where the adrenal glands have been overwhelmed typically because of choices or behaviors. What choices and behaviors drive adrenal fatigue? Lack of sleep, wrong food, lack of sunshine, being involved in relationships that are toxic, going to a workplace or a job that you hate. It slowly steals your soul day by day. These are all things that will drive chronic stress. That's when we're talking about adrenal issues. It's what is driving the chronic stress. So if you can sit down and honestly answer what is driving my chronic stress, or what things do I believe may be driving my chronic stress, and change those, that's number one. You can use glandulars that sometimes are very helpful for people with adrenal fatigue. Glandulars are basically organ meats of the adrenal gland that, for many people, I've seen anecdotally, people just say, wow, those products changed my life. I feel so much more energy. I feel so much better just by using them. And so if you haven't checked out the adrenal glandulars as a potential possibility, that might be helpful for you to check out. We have something called ultra adrenal support, which is a glandular that we use in our practice. As far as your kidneys are concerned, same thing. I mean, your kidneys, if your kidneys are damaged, without the context of what kind of kidney disease you have, it's a little bit harder for me to answer that question, Margie. But I do have 2 things that you could check out. Number one, I have an entire show on adrenal fatigue, and it's about an hour and a half long, but it's full of pearls, and I think you would benefit tremendously from watching it. So if we could maybe post our adrenal crash course show for Margie, and also our kidney crash course show for her as well, because that's the other one. We have a kidney crash course, and I think you'll benefit tremendously from watching these 2 shows, and we'll put links up for you. What do you recommend for a person with alopecia areata? Got to go gluten-free. Man, I've seen full-blown reversal of alopecia areata in my practice just with gluten-free diets. As a matter of fact, I think I have a couple of case studies that we have videos of that you should go check out. If you type in hair loss or alopecia on my YouTube channel, you should be able to pull those up and check them out. But diet change is a necessity, and gluten-free, grain-free has to be the first thing you do in that type of situation. Do you know if there's a do you know if there's a way to combat constant infection with a seat and drain? History of Crohn's, grain-free times 3 months, still in the healing process, but having recurring infections. You might, Anna, consider, because it's a drain, they're just highly susceptible. So I mean, the obvious stuff like the cleaning part, but you might consider antimicrobials. We have a couple of different products. One's called Intestinal Defense. Another one is called Microbial Balance. And those two, you might find benefit in using to try to help tamp that down. You might also consider a really strong probiotic. We have our strongest probiotic is called Ultrabiotic Defense. But those would be the things that I would do personally if I had that situation. Let's scroll down on the right and on the left. Tata says, I have an IgG test and I'm not sensitive to nightshade. Can I eat it? Well, IgG tests are not comprehensive, and I wouldn't rely on an IgG test to make that decision. So I would say, if you only have an IgG test, what about IgA? What about IgM? What about immune complex? What about T cell response? Those are also ways that a person can have reaction against nightshades. And if you don't have that data, you can't really make that decision. Do you use nootropics? No, not really. The main supplements that I use, I test myself every 6 months, and I accommodate my supplement list according to what I'm low in. That's one, but I take multivitamin, I take omega-3, and I take creatine. Those are kind of staples in my diet for me. Outside of that, it's specificity. Now, I have used nootropics before many different times for experimentation, among other things, but it's not something I use consistently. I don't find that it's more beneficial for me to be on them than for me not to be on them. I think a lot of people, when it comes to the different herbs and other supplements that are performance enhancing, I think that a lot of people, this is just my theory, I think a lot of people that benefit from those types of products, the reason they benefit is that they're not doing it right in their day-to-day life. Like, they're benefiting from the medicinal benefit of taking more of something, but their bodies would work just fine if they would dial in their sleep, their exercise, their sunshine, their air, and their water quality. That's my belief. I've seen that pan out time and time again. I think a lot of people gravitate towards supplements to fix a problem that they don't want to actively participate in a real solution with. And so they end up using a supplement as a crutch. That being said, there's no judgment to any of you who take supplements for those types of reasons. I think wanting to enhance your quality of life is an admirable thing to want to do. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing your part actively, you're using supplements as a crutch. Would you ever consider making a toothpaste? We're thinking about it. We're in the process of thinking about it and exploring it now, Scott. Can we use iodine in its skin liquid presentation as a disinfectant, as a way to supplement it? That's not the way I would do it. I'd use it orally. What's PDOB? That stands for Pick Dr. Osborne's brain. I read in some paper, got to find it, that folinic acid is not really a good form of folate supplement. Do you know why? I don't agree with that wholeheartedly. Folic acid's not a good supplement, but folinic acid can be helpful. What are the main names of the 4 main books on studying nutrition that you refer to? There's a lot of them, but I think there's not like a nutrition book per se, because I think if you're trying to study nutrition, you have to do so in the context of physiology and of pathology. So, I mean, I would have a good biochemistry textbook, a good physiology textbook, a good pathology textbook, and then a good solid nutritional foundation textbook. Probably one of the better nutrition foundational textbooks is called Modern Nutrition in Health and Disease, written by Maurice Schills et al. So those 4, would be a good place to start. They're really, really thick, really, really heavy reads. So if you don't have a background in physiology and pathology, the basic sciences and biochemistry, they're going to be really, really tough. But if you have that background, you're going to really enjoy those books. Is the light box good for getting sunlight if you can't go out in the sun? No, it's good for getting light exposure, which is helpful for your eyes and your sleep, but it's not helpful in the terms of UV or infrared. Light boxes are just simply light, but not, UV light or infrared or red light. So you want, if you're using a light box, it's usually for something like seasonal affective disorder, where you're trying to stimulate your eyes to make adequate melatonin through the course of your day so that you can sleep well. But it's not going to provide the vitamin D production that UV light can. It's not going to provide the infrared mitochondrial boost either. Can we do your INA test from overseas? Yes, most European countries, New Zealand, as well as Australia, we can typically drop ship INA to most places in the world. Reach out to our customer service, Katie. That would be glutenology@gmail.com to inquire about that. Does vitamin B1 get rid of lipoedema or lipedema? You mean lipedema? So if you're talking about fat deposits, not fluid deposits, and I'm not sure because you wrote lipodema, which is fat deposits, which is not typical something that happens around ankles. It's usually fluid accumulation, not fat accumulation. So vitamin B1 is really good at getting rid of fluid accumulation around the ankles if said fluid accumulation is as a result of vitamin B1 induced cardio insufficiency or cardiac failure. Is NP thyroid and other pharmaceuticals the last stop for thyroid? Yeah, typically. I mean, it depends on what you mean by last stop. Like, is to me, using any medicine is like, that means you're giving up on finding other approaches. That's not, and that, again, that's not me saying that's what your thought is, but like when a person resigns to using medicine indefinitely and gives up on looking for root cause, yeah, that's the last stop. I know a lot of people, that's not their goal. Their doctors are just pushing the meds, and they don't have any doctors who know how to do it differently. So that's the only answer they've been given. And so that's what they've been doing. But I generally have seen in my practice that most people, not all, but most people can, if they change their diet and their lifestyle, can also get rid of their medications and be healthy. The body, we've been around for thousands of years without synthetic drugs. And I think that, what we have is we have a convenience tax where the modern society conveniences are poisons. And as long as we opt into poisoning ourselves for the sake of social acceptance, we have a trajectory that guarantees illness. When we opt out of that system and we start doing things for ourselves and taking an active role in our day-to-day choices, and do things in a healthy way, I think medicine largely becomes bankrupt. My gene test came back, and under low impact, my gene HLA came back, HLA-DQ8 2.2. Does this mean I'm gluten intolerant? No, but there's more to that. So you only had, so the way you're describing, Janet, your genetic test is not comprehensive enough for me to help you answer that question effectively, because I'm not clear what you mean. Do you have an HLA-DQ8? You have an HLA-DQ8 marker, but you also have HLA-DQ 2.2, which means you have on your beta-1 gene, you have a 2.2, which is an O202. And on your, possibly on your other beta-1 marker is an HLA-DQ8, which would be an O302. But the way you're writing it doesn't make sense to me. I'd have to actually see the report. Do you use tocotrienols in therapy? All the time. Are synthetic vitamins of any use? Sometimes. Like, for example, benfotiamine. Benfotiamine is a synthetic version of fat-soluble vitamin B1 that is vastly more effective than any other form of vitamin B1 clinically that you could use. And so in that regard, I know a lot of people are like, just, if it's synthetic, they're just totally anti toward it. But when you're looking for an outcome, a faster outcome and a better outcome, sometimes, that can be a very effective way to go about it. I'm taking 2 caps of multi-nutrients. Every time I take it, my pulse falls to the 50s. Do you know what can be the cause and what I can do to prevent it? So question is, if your pulse is falling, do you feel good? I mean, my pulse is in the 50s. So, pulse in the 50s is not necessarily a pathological problem, Ingan. And, but if you're finding your pulse is dropping and you're super lethargic and super tired, yeah, that could be a problem. I would tell you to reduce from 2 capsules to 1 capsule. Yeah, it's the same as happening with 400 milligrams of magnesium. A lot of people have magnesium when they take it at higher doses. I shouldn't say a lot. Some people, I'm one of them, that when I really get over 300 milligrams of magnesium, it makes me tired. It has too calming of an effect. Yeah, so Sadaf says there's a claim that supplementing with EPA and DHA isn't useful as the brain can't use them. Also, that they suppress endogenous production of those forms that the brain can use. I don't agree with that at all. Those claims, I would say, are not probably not accurate, because EPA and DHA are essential fats, meaning your body cannot make them. So it's not possible that by taking them, you're going to suppress your own ability to endogenously produce them, because you have to eat them. They have to come through your diet. So I would argue that just the fact that the report you're talking about is saying that it's going to suppress your own ability to make them is very flawed, because that person doesn't understand omega-3s are essential. Is it okay to take taurine and TUDCA at the same time? You could. I mean, there's no contraindication. Does psyllium oppose? I can't make out that question. You interviewed Sally Norton. She says not to exceed 500 milligrams of vitamin C daily because of oxalates. I don't agree with Sally on that. Usually I don't argue with my guests, Laura, because it's just rude. I let them talk about their experiences in their piece to try to help other people see another light that somebody else may have experience with. But clinically speaking, more than 500 milligrams of vitamin C a day in somebody with higher oxalates is generally not a problem. We don't see it being a problem. Whether the vitamin C is ascorbic acid or some other derivative of vitamin C. Okay, let's scroll down on the left. What am I lacking if I have dips in my fingernails? If you have like divots, like pits, smooth pits, probably iron. It's very iron or copper typically. If they're brittle and they split and catch on everything, it could be other things. You might have zinc or selenium deficiency as well. But generally, spooning of the nails, which is what I think you're describing, Amanda, is iron deficiency anemia. So get your iron levels and your ferritin levels checked. Go to your doctor and ask them to check those things and see if that's what's going on. Iron is a very common deficiency in the American diet. If I'm craving sugar, what am I lacking? You could be lacking chromium. You could be lacking vanadium, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins. You could also have a yeast overgrowth. Those are all real common drivers of sugar craving. Should carpets be thrown out every 5 years or so? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends. I think one of the best things you can do for any carpet is to, on a very, very regular basis, HEPA vacuum it. I think the other thing is take your shoes off when you go inside to walk on them, because you track in a lot of outside garbage, and carpets just suck all that stuff up. And over the years, becomes a sponge for poor air quality. I have a 10-year-old recovering from mold. She had relatively high B12 in December. After 2 months with some liver support and no B12 supplements, her level went down. Is this concerning? Look, 1200 is not that high, and 942 is not that high, even in a 10-year-old. What happens with mold recovery is the liver's under tremendous stress and pressure. And when the liver's under stress and pressure, it can release vitamin B12, because the liver stores about 18 months worth of vitamin B12 in it. And so when those cells are being damaged, that extra B12 can spill out into the bloodstream, causing what's known as a pseudo elevation or a false elevation of B12. So it's not anything I would be alarmed about unless she's just super symptomatic in some other ways. So I talked to your pediatrician about, how she's feeling and how she's doing and how she's recovering from that mold. But especially not at 942 would I be concerned, because her liver's going to take a heck of a hit in an attempt to try to pull those mycotoxins from a fat-soluble to a water-soluble state. Does GABA help with high cortisol? We make GABA. You need vitamin B6 to make GABA and amino acids. But, GABA is the brakes of the brain. It doesn't help with high cortisol. What helps with high cortisol is figuring out why it's high. So generally, cortisol is elevated as a result of some stressor in the environment or some stressor biochemically. So you got to dial in what those stressors are, and you've got to reverse them. You can certainly take GABA. Many people with high levels of stress take GABA to get through the stressful moments. But as a long-term strategy, it's not something I'd recommend that you supplement, and definitely without also addressing the underlying reason as to why you're so stressed. Can you use real butter for a carrier? Are you talking about a carrier oil? I guess you could. If you don't have a dairy problem, you could probably use butter as a carrier oil. I've never used it that way, so I can't speak from like a grand experience of butter as a carrier, Victor. Does GABA, let's answer that. Is it possible to take too many supplements in a day? I'm taking about a dozen to support my gut and thyroid disease. Any precaution? It depends on the person. It depends on what you're taking. It depends on why you're taking it. Is there a good reason, or is it a speculative reason? One of the reasons, I have a motto, and that motto is test, don't guess. Why? For the very reason that you're describing. When I put people on nutritional protocols, sometimes it's a lot of things, sometimes it's not so many, but it's always objectively based, so that we know that what we're doing is the right thing for that person, and we're not speculating the potential benefit that that person might receive. So that's the best advice I can give you. If you're taking a lot of pills and you don't really know why, you've just maybe learned some things and you're trying to help yourself, certainly okay. There's generally not a major threat. Supplements are usually pretty safe. That's why there's no regulation, there's no FDA oversight, because people aren't dying left and right from supplement use. Hundreds of thousands of people die every year from medication use. Hell, 13,000 people die every year from just taking aspirin over the counter. So supplements are generally pretty safe, but that doesn't mean you can't get in a pickle if you're mixing and matching a ton of different things, especially when you're taking a lot of herbals, if herbals are in that mix, because herbals can have, sometimes can have untoward effects. I take a lot of vitamins per need throughout the day. Any problem using them this way? No. Have you ever heard of people allergic to aloe? Yes, it can happen. As far as what causes it, the same thing that causes any other type of reaction. It's typically a fundamental breakdown in the immune system or an overwhelm in the immune system. Is vitamin B3 helpful for those with glaucoma? It can be. It's, vitamin B3, otherwise known as NAD, N-A-D. There's a whole supplement craze right now around NAD, and nicotine adenine dinucleotide, which is basically vitamin B3. But it's vitamin B3 helps carry hydrogen into the mitochondria, where energy is produced. Is how we make ATP, which is what runs our body and helps us heal and repair and maintain ourselves. So vitamin B3 is a very essential nutrient that can help with a lot of things. Is CoQ10 good for heart stents and meds, also blood pressure? Is it safe with statins? It's necessary with statins. If you're on a statin and if you're on a blood pressure medication and you're not on CoQ10, to me, that's grounds for suing your doctor for malpractice if they haven't already told you you need to be on them. Merck has a patent for putting CoQ10 in their statin. We've known it, for over 25 years that statins block CoQ10, and CoQ10 deficiency is one of the reasons people have severe side effects from use of statins. Muscle pain, neuropathy, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure are all consequences of CoQ10 deficiency. So is there a danger in taking CoQ10 with a statin? No, I would say there's a danger in taking a statin without CoQ10. And I would even go so far as to say there's just a pure danger of taking statins. It's not something I see eye to eye on with the cardiology community at all. I don't think statins ever really helped anyone unless they have, cholesterol 350 plus in something called hyperfamilial cholesterolemia, which is a genetic hypercholesterolism. But most people that think they have high cholesterol have normal cholesterol, but because they keep changing the reference ranges to increase the amount of people eligible to take the medicine, everybody's confused. Let's just say it like that. Looking at a cataract vitrectomy combo, vitamin due to floaters and main visual field at this point anyway, try to avoid history retinosis. Not excited. I don't know what you're saying there. I'm deficient in lithium, but every time I take 10 milligrams of lithium as prescribed, I end up very exhausted. Yeah, take smaller doses for sure and see how you feel. Lithium kind of calms and relaxes the mind, and that may be perceived as fatigue. My husband has Crohn's. We've been grain-free organic for 3 months, but he still has some issues with infection. I think I answered that one already. Is Ultra Kids safe for a 2-year-old? Yes, it is, Lori. I would do one chewable a day. Just make sure it's not a choking hazard for them. So I guess a 2-year-old, if they have all their teeth and they can chew well, or at least enough teeth where they can chew it up well, because the choking hazard would be the only issue. And if you're worried about that, I would just use a pestle to grind it down, and then maybe mix the powder into some type of pureed food for them. Random electrical jerks in our bodies, even our new grandson. Mold? Very common. I've seen gluten do it. I've seen mold do it. So certainly malnutrition deficiencies around the B vitamins can contribute to that neurological symptom as well. Can you take magnesium and zinc at the same time? Yes. Can vitamin B1 eliminate? I think I answered that one. What are your thoughts on evening primrose oil and royal oil for female hormonal issues? I think they could be very effective. I've seen a lot of women do really, really well, with bad PMS type symptoms who feel much better using primrose or borage. But, those things can be helpful, but I also see a lot of women do really, really well changing their diet. And typically, if they'll change their diet, they don't need the primrose or borage oil for female hormonal issues. Let's go down on the right. Can I trust companies that say they are third-party testing their supplements? I always buy organic and third-party tested. I mean, it's a good place to start if a company's making that claim. We have to have trust somewhere in our society. I would say, it's hard for me to say. I generally, even there are a lot of supplement companies out there, and certainly I own a supplement company, and so I'm biased toward my own products, of course. But that doesn't mean there aren't other good companies either that can't make good products. It's hard to know. I'm here every week. You guys probably have a sense for who I am and probably have an intuition about the kind of person I am. And if you have a bad intuition, you don't stay or hang out and buy anything that I have to offer. And if you do, we have a level of trust because I'm here every week helping you. And I'd say whoever you're buying from, you should have some semblance of intuition around, whether or not that company has a good ethical nature. And, I would trust your intuition, but also call and ask if they're doing third-party testing, ask them for the third-party testing validation sheet. They should have it. It should be on their file if that's what they're claiming. Is chiroinositol better than myoinositol for raising testosterone? No, equivalent. Can gluten sensitivity damage the villi in the intestines, or is it only celiac disease that can damage the villi? No, I mean, gluten is what damages the villi. That process, Kersey, is what's called celiac disease, when the villi are damaged by gluten. Medically, the name of that process is celiac disease, but gluten can damage the villi. Celiac doesn't damage the villi. Celiac is what we call damaged villi caused by gluten. I have Graves' disease and alopecia spread all over. What would be your first go-to? I would read No Grain, No Pain and start following the diet immediately. I've seen cases reverse just with diet alone. And so that would be my first go-to, would be diet change. I'm shocking my cat. I'm shocking the hell out of my cat lately when I pet him and I have new instant coffee. I wonder if it has mold and it's causing this. Mold can definitely cause shocks like that. My dad doesn't have a gallbladder. Should he be taking an oxybol supplement? I would be. If I didn't have a gallbladder, Logan, I'd be taking. We have a product called Lipogest that I can suggest to you. Take it before a meal to help support with digestion. If you're doing a detox, do you need to take a binder at the same time? Depends on the kind of detox that you're doing. Not necessarily. You don't necessarily need to take a binder. You can, but again, depends on the type of detox and what you're detoxing from. Best supplements for a nonverbal toddler? Test, Tanya, don't guess. It could be a number of things. I mean, if you just want to stab at it, I'd say good multivitamin. We have some called Ultra Kids. It's a good place to start, but just generally recommend testing. Can taurine help reduce LPA and aortic calcification? I haven't seen anything that shows taurine reduces LPA. Now vitamin C combined with high doses of lysine, Jane, can. And that's actually, there have been a few small scale case reports published on, I think one was like a 48% reduction in LPA on high doses of lysine mixed with vitamin C. But I haven't seen anything on taurine doing that, and I haven't had any experience with taurine doing that. What do you recommend for kids with PANS and PANDAS caused from toxic orchard spray and mold exposure? Well, first thing, TJ, is get them out of the exposure. I mean, that's number one. No matter what you need to do, if you have to move out of the house or whatever it is, I would get them out of the environment, because they're not going to recover if they're being exposed. Once that's done, step two is to support them through good quality nutrition. I've not seen a case where anyone was able to recover eating a standard American diet. So once you remove the exposure, the diet has to change. And I can encourage you to start at No Grain, No Pain as a starting point for diet change. So Diana says, I'm looking at your vitamin D supplements now. Is it necessary to get the one with vitamin K? No, there's a lot of people out there saying you have to take K with D. This is another reason why I do testing, because the vast majority of people that I test, over 24 years in practice, we might see vitamin K deficiency in 15 to 20%. We see vitamin D deficiency in like 80 to 90%. So if you're just looking for vitamin D as a supplement because you're low in it, you can use the liquid D3 or the gluten-free D, the drops, the emulsified drops, which deliver a stronger dose. If you're just trying to do some maintenance vitamin D supplementation and play it cautious, use the Ultra D plus K, or the Ultra K plus D rather. My very recent blood test shows that, not creatine, Tammy, creatinine has been steadily dropping for the past 6 months. It's come down from 141 to 34 and was flagged in my blood test. Is this good, bad? I'm eating carnivore. So it dropped as a result of eating carnivore? If it dropped as a result of eating carnivore, then probably what's happened is you were having kidney damage from gluten in your diet. And then when you went carnivore, you actually inadvertently went gluten and grain free. And so your kidney quit taking on damage. And now your creatinine is dropping back into a better range. How long can you take creatine, the supplement? You can take it indefinitely. What do you suggest for low dopamine? Well, I mean, if you have low dopamine, confirmed through testing, you can use tyrosine, vitamin B6, vitamin C, and copper. Those are 4 of the nutrients that your body requires to properly produce dopamine. You cannot make dopamine without tyrosine. So those 4 supplements are the precursors to your body's ability to make dopamine. Watching from Trinidad and Tobago, what you think about baking soda for cancer? I think cancer is a multifactorial condition. Taking baking soda is not going to cure it. Many people that develop cancer have hyperacidity because whatever variety of reasons, their diet's poor, is probably one of the biggest. Or they're in mold. Mold is a huge driver of cancers. And so baking soda neutralizes high acidity, but doesn't solve for the reason as to why the acid levels are high in the first place. One of the biggest drivers of high acidity is the diet. So eating, processed foods, sugary foods, gluten and grains, all drivers of hyperacidity that are problematic for people that can contribute to cancer. So I wouldn't put baking soda as a cure-all there by any stretch. Why do I get brain fog from minerals? Maybe the magnesium. The magnesium can make some people overly tired. So check your formula. If it's got magnesium in it, maybe try something without it and see if that still does it to you. What kind of test to do to check what vitamins I lack? So your doctor's not going to know, Marika, but it's called INA, intracellular nutrition analysis. But your doctor's not going to know that. And if they do, hang on to them because they're a good doctor. Do injection forms of vitamins contain gluten, or if I have gluten sensitive person, they can. Many of the injectable forms of vitamins contain fillers, some of which can be grain-based. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of injectables. I'm not a fan of IV. The IV bags contain, there's a new study that just came out on IV bags leaching super toxic plastics into the IV medium that you're injecting into your vasculature directly without protection. I've never really been a tremendous fan of IV nutrition. I know a lot of doctors, love it, but not me. I've never really been a fan for many reasons, but that's that new study bringing that to light just kind of like icing on the top of the cake of one of reasons why I don't like them. Are potatoes okay to eat if I have celiac disease? They are, but if you're not allergic to them. So I mean, that's a unique individual question that I don't know the answer to specifically. But potatoes are definitely gluten free, and so in that regard, you could eat them. I think where a lot of people go wrong with potatoes, or any carbohydrate for that matter, is just quantity. It's overconsumption. So, some people find keto more helpful, but I find balance more helpful. I know a lot of people swear by keto, carnivore, or other kind of more restrictive fat protein diets, but I think when a person's healthy, they can tolerate carbohydrates perfectly well within a certain quantity. And so potatoes are part of that. I don't think they're a problem for many people. Now, they can be a problem, again, uniquely for some. If you're recovering from a mold exposure, should you not take mushroom supplements in the early phase? I don't recommend them, Melissa. There's no evidence medically or studies that say you shouldn't, but it's just, it's just something I don't recommend when people are trying to recover from mold. Thoughts on Mutaflora, probiotic, E. coli, and ESOL 1917? Yeah, there's some good evidence around that probiotic, especially in kids with PANS and PANDAS. So I'm not opposed to that particular strain of bacteria. Love this. You've saved my life and inspired me to study for a career in nutrition so I can help others. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with me. I was mercury poisoned. I have been able to get better removing the source of mercury using supplements, diet, sauna, and so much more, but I can't get off of my thyroid medication. Can you help? Not in a YouTube video, I can't. If you want direct communication with me, then you should reach out to my office and set some time up to have a consultation. Best supplements for upper respiratory, N-acetylcysteine is probably at the top of the list. Vitamin C, quercetin, nettle. Muline is another good one for upper respiratory. Probiotics are good for upper respiratory. How do you feel about red yeast rice in place of a statin? I think if you're trying to lower your cholesterol, you're doing the wrong thing. I think the whole thing around lowering cholesterol as a means to reduce heart disease is BS. That's what I think, Melissa, just to be very blunt. I would strongly encourage you to watch my video. It's titled Cholesterol Myth. Maybe we can put a link in for you to check that out. Does injection, okay, answered that one. Ways to decrease parathyroid hormone is make sure you don't have a vitamin D deficiency. Ask your doctor to check your 25-OHD because low vitamin D can elevate PTH, and it's a very, very common cause. And a lot of people, the doctors don't know that, and so they end up having their parathyroid glands removed, which is, in my opinion, just crazy if as a doctor, if you're making that surgical recommendation without checking somebody's vitamin D. Do I need to take B12 as well if I'm taking inositol and methylfolate for depression? It wouldn't hurt you. Methylfolate works very well together synergistically with vitamin B12. I love this. Thanks for your work. I learned a lot watching your videos over the last few years and could recover from long-term post-traumatic stress disorder, nightmares, anxiety, and depression with the knowledge from your videos. That's amazing. Fantastic. How to break down gallstones naturally. Taurine is what I would have as a primary supplement in my diet if I had gallstones. My husband's doing weekly testosterone shots. You just said you're not a fan of injectables. What else can he do to increase his testosterone? Exercise, weightlift. Number one thing you can do to increase testosterone is go work out, lift weights for guys, and for gals if you have low T. Outside of that, get his nutrition levels checked. Zinc deficiency can cause low T. Boron deficiency can cause low T. Gluten can cause low T. Environmental estrogen exposures, synthetic estrogen exposures can disrupt the endocrine system, causing low T. So there's a lot around that, but no man should really ever need testosterone injections, barring some type of genetic disorder. We have an epidemic of low hormones in our country because of shit food and shit behavior. Excuse my language, but that's just the reality. And I'm not trying to judge or pass judgment on your husband by any stretch. I'm sure he's a fantastic human being. But the road to progress in health comes first with enlightenment and education about what we're doing wrong. And I think if his doctor would have taken the time to sit down with him and talk to him about these things meticulously, he wouldn't be injecting him with synthetic testosterone as a crutch to help him get by. I think, to me, it's pseudo-compassionate to dispense medicine without dispensing knowledge first. Knowledge first, because the health of the person is dependent upon the choice of the person. But if the person doesn't know what choices to make because they're not educated in this way, it's the job of the doctor to do that. Maybe we'll see this changing in the next 4 years with Maha. I hope so. But it saddens me to see so many people depend on medications that aren't necessary just because their doctors either lack the credentialing, the education, the knowledge, or the courage to speak truth. It's hard to tell somebody that they're doing it wrong. It's not an easy conversation to tell another man, hey, quit screwing it up, quit doing things that are wrecking you. Because, many times when you tell somebody the truth, they take offense and they get defensive. Because they think they take truth as an insult, when in fact truth is designed to allow for progress in the right direction. And doctors should have better courage and better training to be able to deliver that, instead of giving people pharmaceutical crutches that they'd have to now pay for the rest of their lives, that are still sad answers as a solution to their problems. Supplements to take for folliculitis depends on why the skin's becoming inflamed. I mean, the wrong food can cause it. I mean, there's really not a supplement I would say is going to solve folliculitis. I mean, there are things that might be helpful, like vitamin C. In that regard, quercetin could be helpful in that regard. But again, always going back to what is driving the cause, not what can I take to mask my symptoms. Terry says, newly diagnosed diabetic with 225 fasting glucose, A1C 9.6. What do you recommend? Is berberine good instead of metformin? I can't tell you to stop your metformin if that's what your doctor's prescribed, but berberine can work quite well. It's actually, there are studies, berberine versus metformin, showing berberine is equally effective. So talk to your doctor about that. As far as like diet change, go no grain, no pain. No grain, no pain. Go read it, Terry, and do the book. Do it for 30 days. Come back to me. Come back in 30 days after doing that and tell me about your A1C and your fasting glucose. If you don't get a 100-point drop in your glucose, I'd be shocked. Is it okay to mix your protein powder in hot coffee, or does that destroy the protein? Anytime you heat up something with boiling water, in terms of protein, you can cause some denaturing. I mean, it's not the best way to take it, honestly. I would probably take it, not in mega hot beverage. Now, maybe a warm beverage, but not a boiling hot one. But outside of that, I'd probably do it in a smoothie. Can a person with CDK, do you mean CKD, chronic kidney disease? I can't tell, Lorraine. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you mean chronic kidney disease, if you're asking me if a person with chronic kidney disease can take amino acids safely, the answer is yes. But you should also work with your doctor to navigate that. Work with a doctor trained in nutrition. How much taurine to support gallbladder? 2 to 3 grams a day is a good place to start. I've got tinnitus and vertigo. Any suggestions about getting rid of it? Change your diet, Erica. Grain-free first. A lot of times that's all that's necessary. I've seen that hundreds of times. Beyond that, nutrient deficiencies, especially B vitamins, can damage the nerve that feeds your ear, creating tinnitus and vertigo. So you might look at that. You might also get with your doctor to have them rule out something called benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, BPPV, if you want the kind of the acronym for that. And you can look that up, and you can read about something called the Epley maneuver, because sometimes people have stuck crystals in their inner ear canals that lead to a tinnitus and a vertigo, and that may be part of your problem too. So I would investigate both angles there. Found out I have polyps on my gallbladder, quit smoking, cannabis and cigarettes. I'm slowly improving my diet by lowering junk food and increasing healthier options. Any advice? Yeah, don't slowly change your diet, fastly change your diet. It shouldn't be a slow thing. It should be like, make the commitment to be healthy. 6 things you can do: change your diet, eat real food. Number 2, go to bed on time. Number 3, exercise. Number 4, go outside and get sunshine regularly. Number 5, filter your air. Number 6, filter your water. It's the best place for anyone to start. It doesn't really cost you a lot of money to do those 6 things consistently. Most of those things don't cost any money, beyond what you're currently already spending. So that's a really good place to start. What's your opinion on drinking raw cacao powder regarding to health benefits? It's not anything I would choose to do. Can you actually take a magnet to test if powders like cacao have heavy metals? You can sometimes pull out iron filaments using a magnet. Okay, let's see. Man, how long have we been going? An hour and a half to almost
2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. You guys got an extra hour today. I gotta go eat. My stomach's growling. Thanks for joining me. Look, if you found value out of the show today, I really would appreciate you returning the favor. Number 1, hit that like button whatever platform you're on. Number 2, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Number 3, take this video and share it with as many people as you think might benefit from it, so that we can help more people find true answers and lead a revolution to change the health of our country and of our world. And if you want more from me, come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org, and you can sign up there for our newsletter. I'll send you a bunch of free information about overcoming chronic inflammation and autoimmunity with diet and lifestyle. And if you want to learn more about mold, come visit me at moldjacked.com. We've got our movies coming out, fingers crossed, in December, along with a book and masterclass on mold. So if you're really looking to learn more there, go visit me there. Thanks so much. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you back here Tuesday at 6 p.m. for a Dr. Osborne Zone crash course. Take care.